So, how did you get your team committed to your vision?
Brigitta?
Okay, I got a few because this is a loaded question. Everything is one thing, and that is, you guys know it, it's energy, right? So if you go in and you are committed and you bring the energy and you have the drive to lead from the front and not like this from the back going, go, but actually lead in a circle and say, let's go. The question now becomes, how do you enroll your team? How do you plug into their vision so they can plug into your vision? Like making the dream so big that their dream fits in your dream. That is a big, big part. And that's what most leaders don't get. Um, um, Creating an understanding and being able to listen to what their vision is so you can plug in and enroll them in your vision. I think enrolling is a big word here.
That was super cool what you did there too. And I'm a visual person, so I got the whole thing. I love that. Next question, how do you create a respectful work environment? Brigitta?
It's listening, right? But it's really, what do you listen for? And that's the question here. And that's the skill. So I'm going to share my screen really quick here so you can see it. You see 8 cylinders. It's listening on all 8 cylinders. What does that mean? Everyone has a coded language. There's the representational system. Are people more visual? Just seems like you just said, right? You're more visual. So I'm bringing more visual aspects to it. Other people are more auditory. They need to hear it. Other people need to connect the feeling to it. And yet other people need to go through the whole process and think through it. So it's auditory, digital, visual, auditory and kinesthetic, but then that's the 4 cylinders. Then what are the other cylinders? And that is plugging into their personality type. Are they more of a very risk averse, very structured person? Are they more of a ready, fire, aim kind of person? Are they more of a nurturing person? Or are they more of a logic and data driven person? So it's really goes back to understanding where your team members are coming from so you can create that respectful environment for them. Because it's not about the leader. It's not just me, me, me. It is about all of us.
Absolutely.
So checking in with them.
Absolutely. And last question, how do you keep your team accountable to the mission? Brigitta?
So poor behavior is a lack of quality communication. If someone is not plugged in or needs to be held accountable to the mission, that goes back to you. That goes back to the leader. That goes back to the boss, if you will. And check in with your own communication. Are you really listening? Are you really checking in with the people that you're working with? Are you, accountability and motivation is not external. It's actually internal, and it can only come from each person within. So what are you doing to hold yourself accountable? What are you doing to create that energy within your organization? How are you listening to your team? And how are you becoming more flexible in your communication so you are getting actually the results in your team that you want to have, that you're looking for? Poor behavior also means that you're not getting the results that you really want. And that goes back to the sender. That goes back to you. So you might as well, become a better communicator.
I think what you said there, the flexibility of communication, because sometimes they have one way of doing it and it's hard to want to shift to be able to reach, but it's very, very important. Thank you.
Guess we can move on to the next. Brigitta.
Awesome. Thank you. That was great information. Thanks so much. I'd like to open also this up to everyone that is on our little boardroom discussion here. And I want to hear from you. You've heard some information from me personally and from others. What are things that really stood out to you? And you can probably put it in the chat box, because where I really want to come from is not just the agenda that I think I want to bring to you. It's really plugging into what is it that you want to know, right? What can I bring? Which content can I go deeper into? If you want to share that with me right here, and there are, a few people on here that I personally don't know. So share that in the chat box. And in the meantime, I'm going to go into my slide. Let me share my screen real quick, but I really want to touch base with you guys and not just bring just kind of verbally vomit all over you. During this time, we talked about respect, we talked about HR, we talked about COVID. During this time, we're all about restructuring and reinventing. Business as usual is not business anymore, and we're not going to go back to the old norm. We're creating a new. One of my clients said the other day, I'm creating a new exceptional, which I really liked. So that's easy said, harder to do. And, taking this visual here, as you can probably see when you look closer at it, the H2O is written in water. And if we go with the water analogy, oops, sorry, hold on, bear with me. Nope, wait, I think I'm in the wrong PowerPoint. Bear with me, sorry about that. So if we go with the water analogy, if we look at ice is very rigid. Ice can also be sculptured, but ice in this, for water in form of ice right now is not serving us. So as we are reinventing and as we are restructuring, and I'm using very carefully reinventing and restructuring, a denominalization, because it is ongoing. It is an ongoing process. It is not we reinvent and restructure right now. It is because we still continue to be in this time of uncertainty. So we are ongoing reinventing and restructuring. So it will serve us to continue with the water analogy, to go from that rigidness of ice into more water, because water, when it is in fluid form, it can go into any creases, it can become more flexible. And I talked about the choice of flexibility earlier. And choice of flexibility in our communication specifically, that's where my expertise is. I am the founder of a Montessori school. It's been around for, 17 years. We started with 3 kids and are now 120 kids in for the new school year. Even though we go through the pandemic, even though we have this sense of uncertainty and this time of uncertainty, we continue to grow because we have that flexibility, and we had to quickly shift and, I really hate the word, but I'm going to use it anyway, pivot. It's being overused over the past few weeks and months, but we have become more water, and we have been able to serve our community in a much better way by becoming quickly more flexible. So you being in the organization or in your own business that you are, becoming water instead of being ice is going to serve you a lot better and way more. And then if you chose to, you could even go into steam. And I don't mean like in lightheaded, bursting out of every seam that you think sometimes you want to burst out, but really going into steam to come back and become water, to go into perhaps another sculpture and create another sculpture as we go into a more certain time. I don't think that there is ever going to be a certain time in any industry. Let's be really honest. I think about Pyrex back in the days when they were the only ones that created, tempered glass, and they would make this tempered glass that you could put in the oven to put your casserole in. And then other companies saw what they did, and they reinvented the Pyrex, put another name on it, put it on the market for a lot less money. Pyrex had to go back to the drawing board with their employees and say, what else can we do? How can we stay in business before we go into chapter 11 or 13? How can we stay in business with the machineries that we have and with the process that we have, with the material that we have? What else can we do? And that's when they, down the road came out with the tempered glass that we nowadays use for mobile phones and for our iPhones and Androids and whatnot. So because they were able to switch from being a very rigid, this is what we do, to looking at what else can we do with the things with the machinery and the material that we have. I think this is a perfect storm right now to look at our organizations, our businesses, our leadership, and see what else can we do? How else can we serve our clients with doing business a slightly different way? So reinventing and restructuring our business. I want to go into, maybe want to check, I'm going to stop sharing real quick. Just want to see that there are some questions, or not questions, and I can't see that when I'm sharing my screen. So I also want to go, let me share my screen again, into what I said earlier. And some of you might have some knowledge around the Moravian communication model. I don't want to take it out of context. It is only in high emotional states. And yes, during the pandemic, we are in emotionally high, in a high emotional state in our communication, where 7% are words. Our communication is made of 7% words, 38% tonality, and 55% body language. So if we only go by, as we're restructuring and reinventing, and we're communicating with our staff and our team and our clientele, and we only focus on 7% words in our marketing materials, in our email campaigns, and anything that goes out to our team in written word only, and we are not firing off the 8 cylinders, as I said earlier, we're really missing the boat. So as I said earlier, the first 4 cylinders are auditory, visual, auditory, digital, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. So I have a little bit of a word catalog here. These are just some words. These are definitely not all words, but I teach other customer relations, HR teams to be very fluent in all 4, because if you are only fluent in your dominant code, and let's face it, we're all, someone said earlier, I am a very visual, I think it was Justine that said that, I'm a very visual person. I am a very visual person too, but that doesn't mean that all of the others are very visual. So if I only write in a more visual sense, then it will not land with the person that is reading it. It'll only land with about 25% of the people that are reading it, because I personally am a more visual person. When I speak to others, I'm going to use more visual analogies rather than, and that's coming out in my word catalog, rather than, the kinesthetic, the auditory, or the auditory digital word catalog. I'll give you a really good example. One of my clients he was frustrated. He's a business man, owns several businesses, multi-million dollar companies. And he was so upset, and he came to us for consultation because his communications, he noticed it just didn't work. And we started out with, he said, I cannot work with my CPA. He just doesn't get it. Like, I drive in my Tesla, he says, in the morning to one of my offices to check in, and I'm on the phone with my CPA and go through what I need from him that day on the phone, but he just doesn't get it. He doesn't hear what I'm saying. Clearly, my client is highly auditory because he's telling him what to do. And I asked him, I said, Umesh, tell me a little more about your CPA. And he tells me more about him, and that he's great with, going through the spreadsheets and giving him everything printed out and, in person. And I'm hearing that the CPA is actually a highly visual person. I said, okay, so here's what you're going to do. You're going to take time to sit down for a Zoom call, not while you're on the way to the office, for a Zoom call, and you're going to share your screen, and you're going to show him what you want. And then I'd like for you to report back. Took him a week. He comes back to me. He goes, holy cow, it's like day and night. What did you do? I said, I just told you to show him what you want and not tell him. That is the only difference. Like, meet people where they're freaking at, and don't think that they have to adjust to you. No, as the sender, as I said earlier, you got to adjust to them. And that is our responsibility as leaders. That is our responsibility as consultants, as business owners, to communicate in the person of their dominant code, of their dominant representational system, of how they organize their model of the world, and not look at me, you gotta adjust to me. No, that's not what respect is. When I go to France and I go into a cafe to order a café au lait and a croissant, I might as well do that in French and not in English or in German, which German is my native tongue. No, I don't expect that they speak either language. I need to adjust to their language. I'm in their country, right? So that's all a matter of respect. So that's 4 cylinders. Now let's look at the other 4 cylinders, and that is coming out of your personality type, right? So you have, you're either in your dominant code, a very structured, risk-averse personality type. And I'm saying dominant codes because we are all 4 codes. Just like in the representational system, we can communicate in all 4, but we have one dominant one that we communicate in. So same here, you're either in the dominant code, very blueprint, very structured, very process-driven, or you're ready, fire, aim kind of, bottom line, let's just go do it and let no prisoners taken, we're going to go and crush it. Or are you more of a nurturing person that is all about harmony and integrity and making sure that there's community and that there's ethics within the community? Or are you a personality type that is very logic driven, needs the data, needs all the fine print, needs to see the big picture, and has to have everything accurately in place? Again, we're all 4, but we communicate in one, and we value one of these the most, and that drives us. If we go into the neurological levels, let me stop sharing my screen yet one more time because I want to hop into the neurological levels. If we go by the neurological levels, this the third down, the values and the beliefs, those are starting from the capabilities down. It's an easier change, right? This is the change of the pyramid of change by Robert Dilts. But going up from values and beliefs into the identity and the purpose, that's where change is hard. Most people start the change in HR, in any organization, in the environment, because that's the easiest. It's almost like rearranging the deck chairs on the sinking Titanic. Where we really want to focus on is plugging into what people believe. What do they value? And get to the bottom of what people, our team members, our staff, what do they really value? What do they believe? And then plug into that and communicate on that level. Because then you can also plug into the identity. What is how do they identify themselves, and how do they identify themselves within the organization? And then plugging into the purpose and the mission of what I said earlier. You can only have people, your staff, your employees, your team members plug into your mission if you're clear about their mission. And that's where it starts. Most people are, they just don't know. They don't know what drives them. They don't know what wakes them up in the morning, or where do they want to go. This often happens mostly with employees than with entrepreneurs. But I coach a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of business owners where they're still in the midst of finding their purpose, or they're in a transition and finding their new purpose, where purpose hardly ever changes. It's something very deep in their imprint phase that happened.